Shalom everyone, and today we study Parashat Terumah, the book of Exodus, chapter 25, verse 1. Parashat Terumah, just to remind the context, it's about the building of the tabernacle, the Mishkan, the portable temple the Israelites built in the desert. However, we still the Parashat Terumah and next week's Tetsaveh, it is still part of the Mount Sinai revelation. It is part of the revelation and all what was given to the Israelites on Mount Sinai. So this is also by Baal HaSulam or Rabbi Ashlag, part of the ShOVaVYM period, ShOVaVYM TaT. So it's a time of the year still for transformation, higher than other times of the year. And let us deal with the Parashat Terumah. So just historically, as the Israelites come out of Egypt, they have the Mount Sinai revelation to remind everybody when Moses is coming down from the mount, Golden Calf, he breaks the tablets, he goes up again a few weeks later, gets a second set of tablets, he comes down on Yom Kippur, the day he gets down from the mountain Yom Kippur. The next day, he's gathering the Israelites to start building the tabernacle. That was in the month of Tishrei. And it took less than 6 months, maybe even less than 5 months. And by the end of Adar, the tabernacle was complete. On the first day of Nisan, a year after the Exodus, the tabernacle was established. Now, the tabernacle, as I said again, Mishkan in Hebrew. I don't get the word tabernacle. It's not even English. I think it's Greek or something like this. Mishkan, it's a much, familiar word. Mishkan is a simple word in Hebrew, even today, more than 3,000 years later. It's a dwelling place, the dwelling place of God. Okay, and what is the great idea over here? When we are talking about the idea that is Parashat Terumah, everybody donated for the building of the Mishkan. Everybody participated. The words we can read the words, verse 2, chapter 25, Daber el bnei Israel, talk to the children of Israel, Vikhu li Terumah. They should take my contribution. Met kol ish asher yidvenu libo, from every person, whatever his heart is giving, tikhu terumati, you will take my contribution. In that context, the word terumah is contribution. Vezot terumah, and this is the terumah. This is the contribution that you will take from them. Asher tikhu meitam zahav v'chesef u'nechoshet, gold, silver, and copper. Utchelet v'argaman v'tolat shani. These are very expensive dyes from the ancient times. And there's a list of the materials they used to build the Mishkan. Okay, what is the concept? We have to understand the Mishkan was built within few months. It was a portable worship house of worship. It was a portable one. They assembled it, put it together, and worshipped God in the Mishkan. They worship, the whole ceremonial procedure is described for the rest of the book of Shemot and most of the book of Vayikra, Leviticus. Okay, one little detail. Okay, the Mishkan has been used for 39 years in the desert. The first year, we built it just over the first year. Then, when the Israelites entered the promised land, After a few years, they established the Mishkan in Shiloh. Shiloh is uh, maybe 20 miles north of Jerusalem. I'm not so sure. That's about the on the same road, the road of the patriarchs on the mountain ridge of Israel. In Shiloh, the Mishkan was established, but in one little difference, instead of uh, portable walls, that there was no need to carry, disassemble, and carry, disassemble like it was in the temple. So there were stone walls. The roof was still the all those fancy cloth, whatever was on the rooftop of the Mishkan in the desert. And that was like this till the Philistines burned Shiloh uh, just before King Shaul became the king of Israel. One of the reasons that the Israelites needed a king was that the Philistines burned Shiloh and the Mishkan, and the Ark of the Covenant went into exile, and then it came back, and then it wandered from one place to another. Finally, only in the time of King David, he brings what is left from the Mishkan, he brings it into Jerusalem. Still, it is on the portable version. Only King Solomon established the second temple, and from that moment anymore, we have Mikdash, a temple, not Mishkan anymore. And then the Mikdash, more than 400 years later, was destroyed by the Babylonians. 70 years later, it was rebuilt by the exilers from Babylon who came back under the Cyrus Declaration and the efforts of Mordechai and Esther in Shushan, and then the second temple was built. Now, the first and the second temple were not built by the instruction and the size of the Mishkan, different. Okay? And then we learn in the book of Ezekiel that the third temple that will be built soon, God willing, by the King Messiah, it will be much, much bigger. The dimensions will be different. So why is it that we still study about the Mishkan and its sizes and its materials? And the basic idea is we are really using the story of Parshat Terumah for one of the most precious ideas of our spiritual journey. And what is the idea? Understanding the word terumah. So yes, we use the word terumah in Hebrew in the context of the English word contribution, okay? But the words do not really align. That's in the context. In English, you use the verb to raise when it's coming to donations. You're raising donations. Why raising donations? You have the verb collecting donations. Why the word raising is in that place? And the answer is because that's what Terumah is about. The word Terumah, the Zohar is explaining to us, is Tarom Hey. The original word for terumah is not about giving, okay, giving or contributing. It's about raising. The word tarom is about raising. When you want to raise somebody's head, leharem, harem et rosh. So this is the verb, or this is the source, the shorish of the word, hey resh mem. And Terumah, the Zohar is teaching us, is Tarom Hey. What does it mean? That everybody wants to be raised. Everybody wants to get to the next level. Everybody wants to reach a higher level from where he remembers himself. You don't want to stay the same level you've been when you've been a kid. You want to rise, so that's why, school, grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, you're jumping, you're climbing up the ladder till you finish high school, and then you go to college or university. Again, you have steps: first, second, third year, first degree, second degree, third degree. You always trying as human beings to rise higher and higher and higher. And here comes the most precious piece of information that you'll ever understand. And here, how do you really raise? There's so many people that are working so hard so their latitude could be raised. So the rules in our society are that the more money, the more power, the more knowledge, the more titles you have, you raise your status. The higher your status is, you are supposed to reach more accomplishment and status. The question is, does that make you happy? And the answer is not necessarily. A research that was published last week found that the fact that you are rich doesn't make you necessarily happy. Now, all the people with great titles that you know are happy. All the people that are rich that you know, are they really necessarily happy? No, it's not a must. Why is it not a must? So I'll teach you a very important Kabbalistic secret, just as a introduction to the biggest secret. The secret says like this: how do you know that somebody is really happy? A lot of people are trying to show that they are successful, therefore happy. Showing off is one of the biggest thing in our materialistic society. How do you know that somebody is really successful? And the answer is, if you feel successful, then nobody can argue with you because that's your own feeling. Okay? Now, how do you know that somebody feels successful and really accomplished? And the answer is, Rabbi Ashlag, the commentator of the Zohar, is teaching us something very important. You cannot give what you do not have, which means we all know deep inside that when we have those moments, hours, sometimes more than that, of real happiness and fulfillment, how do we feel towards other people? So we all know that when we're really feeling good, fulfilled, and happy, it's almost impossible being not nice towards other people. Because the moment you're happy, you can't stop yourself from sharing it with other people. You want other people to be happy as you are. And you know what? Even when you meet people who are not lovable, people that are really, what should I say? You're not your real closest friends, and sometimes you really dislike them. But when you're happy, maybe you don't want to jump and embrace them, but you tolerate them. Okay, let them be. They have their own things, leave them alone. Okay, so you know very well that you cannot give what you don't have. And that means that if you're full of happiness, love, and anything that is good, that's what you in nature do project towards others. And what does it mean? How do I know that that accomplished person, he is very rich and powerful. He climbed up the ladder of society. He's holding the most respectable positions. How do I know he's happy? The way he treats other human beings, and even animals. If he's really happy, he should be treating them with kindness. The question is like this: how many people do we know that it looks from the outside, they are accomplished, they have a lot of power, a lot of wealth, status, and whatever, but they're mean? Why are they mean? Because they're not happy. Because you cannot give what you don't have. If you're full of pain, emptiness, confusion, you have no love or positivity to give to others. So, Elon Musk that became the richest person on earth ever last week, he 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 put on his social network that message that this is the proof that you cannot buy happiness with money. The fact that you accumulate so much power and money does not guarantee your happiness. So what will guarantee your happiness? Tells us the Torah, terumah. Terumah is raising, tarom, hay, raising the hay. Whoever studies Kabbalah knows that usually when we're talking about the Hebrew letter hey, we're talking about the fourth letter of the name of four letters, the tetragrammaton, tetra, four, the name of four letters. And the fourth letter symbolize Sefirat Malchut. Sefirat Malchut means this is the vessel. The vessel means for every human being, the I, my desires, my consciousness, my being, my awareness, my needs, my ambition, my home, my house, my dwellings, my business, my career, my family, all what we identify with. This is me, and this is my vessel for when I'm saying somebody wants bliss. He wants the bliss to fulfill what? My being, my home, my business, my community. This is the letter Hey. The letter Hey is the vessel to receive the abundance that is coming from above. The abundance is invisible, but when it's fulfilling the vessel is elated. So when you say terumah, you mean to elevate, to raise the hay. How do you raise the hay? Terumah, contribution. Okay, that's why the game of words that in Hebrew, it's the same word terumah, raising the hay, and giving, contributing, that's the same thing. Which means what the Torah is teaching us over here, how do you raise the hay? How do you raise your being, your calling, your mission, your ambition, your home, your business, whatever, when you add up giving, when you add up being there for someone that is not just me. So another research that was published last week said that rich people that are busy giving, sharing, which means using their power, their wealth to make other people feel better and more successful, they feel happier and they feel more rich than people that spend their money on indulging themselves. Scientific proven fact already. And I don't know, I think most of us, we do not need the scientific research because, personal experience, meeting so many people, you realize though there are those people who accumulate fortune and spend it on themselves, and that will never satiate the soul. However, those people who use their place of power, that they reach, their latitude they achieved, and they use that in order to help other people to ascend, to improve, they have a better feeling about themselves. So we learned last week in Parshat Mishpatim about reincarnations. Why would somebody come to this world and achieve wealth and power? Many times this is God's gift to us, so we can take that gift in order to correct ourselves by correcting the world around us. Tikkun olam. I'm not doing a favor to the world when I'm making the world a better place. I'm doing myself a favor, and that is concealed in the word terumah, which means when I give, when I share, I'm really raising my frequency, reaching out and above, as it says in the book of Leviticus, love others as you love yourself. I am God. ואהבת לרעך כמוך, אני Hashem. What does it mean? I think that I'm doing somebody a favor when I'm loving them, but really, when I love other people, the Torah is teaching me I am getting closer to God, which means I am getting closer to the tree of life consciousness. I'm raising myself. I'm ascending to a real higher frequency, and then I can touch the tree of life frequency, and the abundance can come flowing down and fulfill myself, my being, my reality. So the point that we see here, that the first project the Israelites are involved with after Mount Sinai revelation is building the tabernacle, which means everybody brings something. Even, let's say, there was a woman who was not, the commentators are saying they were not really rich, but she had the mirror, a copper. At that time, they didn't have the mirrors we have of glass, but it was polished copper. So she brought that mirror of copper to the building of the tabernacle, and they use it for the copper basin to hold the water that was essential for the priest work in the temple. So every time the high priest or the other priests washed their hands for the temple work, the woman could say, oh, that's my copper mirror that is doing that. So we're here to grow, to be the God's vessels of light. However, in order for us to be able to be the vessels of God's light, we have to ascend, we have to raise ourselves. And the way we raise ourselves is when we get out of our selfish needs. There's no end for our needs. I need this and I need this. I need an attention, I need money. I need food, I need power, I need health, I need wealth, so on and so forth. But remember one very important thing. One thing that we study when we study Kabbalah. When we study Kabbalah, we study about the rule of Shivui Tzura. This rule says similarities attract. The Creator's power is infinite giving. Our natural birthright nature is finite receiving. So, according to the teachings of the Rabbi Ashlag, that there's not two farther poles from each other than the infinite light of giving of the Creator and the finite light of the finite frequency of the selfishness of a human being. There's no way there's going to be a communication between the two poles. How can you really connect between the two poles? The only way to do it is when a human being is transcending, transforming his natural egotism, selfishness, into I want to be happy, but the first rule is I have to make other people happy first. So when we make terumah, and that could be time, could be energy, could be a smile, could be a hug, could be a nice word, could be given an attention, that is a bigger contribution many times than money. Everything that you own, from time to money, okay, and the whole range in between, if you have it, you can use it in order to make other people feel better. When you do that, remember, you changed your frequency from being stuck in the North Pole of reality, and the more caring, the more loving, the more giving, the more you reach out towards other, your frequency is starting to move from the North Pole back and back into towards the South Pole, which is the giving of God. And as you ascend, as you raise yourself from the bottom higher, you basically connect to the tree of life, and then the abundance start to flow from above. So don't even think that when you give to others, it's just because you feel mercy for them or because you want something from them. Most of the times they cannot give you what you expect them to give you. But if you really want to be a spiritual, successful, truthfully successful, authentically human being, you just give because that's the way you can raise the hay, raise your reality to a higher frequency till the hay unites with the Vav, and then it unites with the other letters of the tetragrammaton, with the tree of life. And then the tree of life starts to funnel the abundance into your life. That is a very important idea. That idea is eternal. It applies everywhere. It applies all the time. It applies to ancient times and to the modern times. And it is the main pillar of human growth. But there's another idea, because let's say when we say, ועשו לי משכן, ועשו לי מקדש ושכנתי בתוכם, that's verse 4, and they make, verse 5, and they make me a temple, and I will dwell in them. Now we can understand what does it mean. When people make a temple for God, they give of themselves, they're really making themselves a dwelling place, shachanti, to dwell. That's the same shoresh as mishkan, shechina. All of these words come from the letters shin, kaf, nun. Shachanti, I will dwell in them. Mishkan, a place of dwelling of God's light. Could be Mishkan when you talk about, you can ask about somebody, where do you dwell? Where are you shochen? Neighbor, shachen in Hebrew. Neighbor, somebody who dwells next to me. So the word shin kaf nun is about a dwelling, not necessarily of God. But when we're saying the Mishkan, ha-Mishkan, we're talking about the dwelling place of God's light. And here it says very simply, when we build a temple, we make ourselves a dwelling place for God's light. So basically the whole purpose of Parshat Terumah is, how does a person make himself a Mishkan for God's light? So now we understand the eternal dimension of the story over here. Now, how do we apply it in different aspects according to all the stories we have? So first of all, we have here the most important generator of energy in the Mishkan, that was the Ark of the Covenant. That's verse 10. ועשו ארון עשי שיטים 2.5 אורכו. And they make an ark made of acacia tree, acacia wood. And here are the measurements. Inside the Ark of the Covenant were the 2 tablets. And then they covered it with gold, and they built, I won't go into the details. So the Ark of the Covenant was basically traveling in front of the camp of the Israelites in the desert. When they camped, they brought the Ark of the Covenant into the Mishkan, into Kodesh HaKodashim, the Holy of Holies. And finally, in the time of King Solomon, when the Ark of the Covenant was finally placed over the Even Ashtiyah, the foundation stone, that's the place, according to the Midrash, where the heavens kiss the earth, when the upper dimension kisses the physical planet of Earth, and that is the foundation stone, or where today you have the dome of the rock with the golden dome. Why is it called the Dome of the Rock? Because it is built as a monument over the rock, the foundation stone, that is the foundation stone of the whole earth, which means the whole earth was built from that. And another meaning to that, Even HaShetiyah, in Hebrew, that's a name. Even HaShetiyah means the foundation stone, but it means also the drinking stone, which means the whole world is drinking its livelihood and abundance from that place. There, this is why the first temple was built there, the second temple was built there, the third temple will be built over there, and that is the most sensitive point over planet Earth. And today, why is it so sensitive politically? Because the question is, who controls that most important point on the globe? Okay? But what do I do with that today? Few generations before the destruction of the first temple, the Ark of the Covenant disappeared. It was hidden because the prophecy knew that the temple will be destroyed. Nobody wanted the enemies to take it outside Israel. The Ark of the Covenant was hidden. Whoever saw the movie Raiders of the Lost Ark, it kind of trying to give the echoes of the different legends about where did the Ark of the Covenant go. Personally, we don't have any encounter with the Ark of the Covenant. So we don't care right now about the story, what happened with that. So where is the Ark of the Covenant today in my life? Because we read it in the Torah. The Zohar is explaining very simply, in every synagogue, there's an ark. It's a wooden box, usually, and inside the wooden box, you have the covenant. You have the Torah written on parchment exactly the way Moses wrote it just before he ascended to heavens. So in every synagogue, the powerhouse of the synagogue is the ark, that inside you have the covenant, the parchment of the Torah, and every time the Torah is being taken out, on Shabbat, on Rosh Chodesh, on holidays, Mondays and Thursdays, during the week in the morning, the Torah is being taken out to the middle of the synagogue, and there it's being read, and the energy of life spreads. So that is one place that you have an encounter with the Ark of the Covenant. But every time that you study Torah, you are connecting to the power of the Ark of the Covenant. And nowadays, the Zohar in many places, but especially in the Zohar Parshat Ba'alotcha, it says it in our generation, the power of the Ark, Noah's Ark and the Ark of the Covenant, is by studying the Zohar. And by this, you create the forces of protection for yourself, like the Ark of the Covenant created that force of protection that it was traveling in front of the camp of the Israelites, clearing the way from any kind of damage, snakes or whatever. And by that, made life protected. So the Ark of the Covenant can be met in these kind of ways until you can say that somebody is really studying a lot of Torah and becomes a spiritual human being, an elevated human being, Terumah, that elevates himself by applying the values of the Torah, of spirituality and so on. This is, you can say, he is a walking Torah, a walking Ark of the Covenant. But there's another very important concept over here. One of the most important concepts that the Torah is teaching us, that the purpose of a human being is not to detach from his desires, from his needs, and therefore the most holiest people are the people who have nothing, and there's nothing that connects them to this physical world, and therefore they can fly to heaven and unite with the infinite. This is not the idea. The story of the making of the Mishkan is about the idea that we came incarnated, born into a physical dimension, into a physical world, not to get rid of it, but to transform the physical experience, the materialistic dimension, into a holy dimension, taking gold, silver, and copper and sanctify them, taking precious cloth and whatever you have over here, and making it a place that the holiness can dwell in, Mishkan. Where should that be established? So not just in the synagogue. So in the synagogue you have a kind, that's why it's being called a synagogue mikdash me'at. It's a little bit of the temple. And every synagogue around the world that was sanctified and have the Torah, and Torah is being read, whatever, has special forces of holiness, because the physical materials, they just, the wood and the mortar and the stones, they become heightened. They are being raised by humans using it as a dwelling for God's light. So you can take like 4 walls and a ceiling, bring an ark and bring a Torah into it, celebrate, pray, meditate, and so on, and the place will be a Mishkan. A Mishkan, a place of dwelling of holiness. And one day, I think so, I'm sure, one day scientifically we can find change in the frequency of the molecules and the atoms of the physical materials that are making a synagogue. But does that end only in the synagogue? No, it does not. After the temple was destroyed, if you think about it, the temple was the center of the work of sacredness of the world, which means the temple was not just a center for the Kohanim and the Leviim and the children of Israel. It was a center for, as it was declared to be, for bringing light for all 70 nations. And that's why finally it was established upon the foundation stone, the drinking stone, from which the whole world is drinking its abundance. Okay? Now, we learn many times that when God created the human soul, he created it in its own image, which means there's no physical image for sure, because God is infinite and therefore he does not have any finite contour, right? Shape or definition. Infinite and defined, it's, they don't go together. It's the opposites. Okay? So what's the image of God? And the image of God is mental. And it means that the human being was created to be a creator of his own, and therefore we could not stay in the world of oneness and unity as it was created perfectly by God. We needed it to be broken, like on the second day of the creation, so we can put things together. And the highest level of putting things together is taking the materialistic dimension and making it a mishkan for holiness. And therefore, as long as there was the Beit HaMikdash, the temple, Mishkan, and later on the temple, so most of the work was done by the Kohanim and the Leviim in Beit HaMikdash. But still, there was a whole work that every individual had to work. Okay, the rest of the mitzvot, prayers, values, love others as you love yourself. However, after the destruction of the second temple, that had to be more strengthened, the idea of the individual responsibility for sanctification of the physical world. And then it was like all the functions of the Mishkan had to be outsourced to every individual. And therefore, when we read the rest of the Parshat Terumah, we can align every part to what we do today. For instance, after the building of the Ark of the Covenant, on verse 23, chapter 25, Ve'asita shulchan atzei shitim, and you make a table made of acacia tree. Acacia tree is the most common trees that can survive in the desert. So it was easier to find, finding cedar tree in the desert, it's too far from the Lebanon to bring the cedar from there. So where is that shulchan? Where is that table? And the sages are saying when you prepare the Shabbat table and you cover it with white cloth and you put the candles and the chalot over it, you are creating, the Zohar is saying, Parshat Vayakel, the table, the Shabbat you prepare, the table you prepare for Shabbat is standing between the upper world and the physical world. Just when you say Lichvod Shabbat Kodesh, in honor of the Holy Shabbat, in that moment, the table rises, Terumah again, and it's now not just a simple table. It's a table that stands between the world to come, Olam Haba, and this physical world, Olam Hazeh, especially when you dedicate it for Shabbat. And that table is the Shulchan, the table of Beit HaMikdash. And the same, on that table, they put the 12 breads of the 12 breads, the holy breads. Now, it's kind of not easy to have 12 breads every Shabbat on the table. So, if you notice, the special challah bread for Shabbat has to be long. Why long? So the Kabbalist will explain to you long because it looks like the Hebrew letter Vav. And why do you bless over two challah breads? Because Vav is 6, two challah breads, it's 12. That represents the 12 loaves of bread on the table in the Mishkan and later on in the Mikdash. Why 12? So we know 12 is a very powerful number, the 12 tribal Israel, the 12 signs of the zodiac, but why 12 again? One of the highest levels to connect to God's bliss is when not just you meditate on the name of God, Yud and Hey, Vav and Hey, but you meditate on it 3 times. 3 times, that means right, left, and center. Chesed, Din, Rachamim. Kindness, loving kindness, judgment, and mercy. It's the 3 forces, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. How many letters do you have? 12. And these are the 12 breads on the table. And these are the 12 letters. When you put the bread together, you unite them, and then it becomes 13, explains the Zohar. 13 is one above nature. 13 is the same gematria, numerical value, as ahava, love, as echad, one. And that's what we're here for. So here, your Shabbat table represent the table of the bread in the temple. So what's the next story? The next story is the building Ve'asita menorat zahav tahor. That's the same chapter 25, verse 31. And you make the golden menorah, the golden candelabra. And that menorah is represented by the Shabbat candles. So therefore you have, when you set the Shabbat table, you already made a Mishkan in your house. And you are the high priest. And your wife is the high priestess, which means she lights the Shabbat candles like Aaron the high priest was lighting the Shabbat candles, and then your home becomes a mini Mishkan for the holy light to dwell in its walls, ceiling, and everything. But it's not enough because we have few other parts. And what are they? The next part will be the altar. V'asita, chapter 27, verse 1, V'asita et hamizbeach, and you make the altar. Now, the same table that serves in the beginning of the Shabbat meal for the blessing over the bread, but on that table is also that you eat the rest of the meal. And here, what everybody's saying, when you eat the food on the table, your table becomes the altar of Beit HaMikdash. The eating of the food with that consciousness, it's like the offerings of the food over the altar in Beit HaMikdash. And when you eat with that consciousness, you create an elevation of the spiritual sparks in the food that you eat, raising them up to the upper worlds with your intentions and your meditations of eating on Shabbat. And therefore, the Shabbat table makes your home to be your Mishkan. Okay, so if we say that the British man's home is his castle, for us, our home is our temple, our Mishkan. And as we treat it this way, we are making Terumah. We raise every physical object in our home to be on the level of a Mishkan. We raise the frequency of our bodies and our being to become a Mishkan. But what about the walls of the Mishkan? Okay? So, we can find that also in the Zohar Parshat Terumah. ועשית את הקרשים למשכן עצי שיטים עומדים. That is later on. We're talking about the wood that made the walls of the Mishkan, again, acacia wood. And the Zohar, verse 788, is teaching us as follows. פתח יואל בתורה ואמר, ועשית את הקרשים למשכן עצי שיטים עומדים. כתיב הכה עומדים וכתיב הכתם שרפים עומדים. מה להלן שרפים ובהכה נמי שרפים, אילן קרשים קיימים בתיקוני דחלה. וסחרן סחרנה דחופה, למשרי באו חופה רוח אילה. כגבנה דקלה לטאטה יצטרך לתקנה על חופה לחופה, ותקינו שפירו. And that's what the Zohar is teaching us. When we bring a bride and a groom together into the wedding ceremony, we need to have 4 poles and a chuppah. A chuppah, a piece of cloth between the 4 poles, held above the bride and the groom. Those poles, they correspond to the poles of the Mishkan. The Mishkan was covered with cloth. The cloth of the chuppah is the cloth of the Mishkan, which means if you haven't ever been in the Mishkan, but you want to feel how does it feel like to be in the Mishkan, it's when you go to the chuppah, in the middle of the chuppah, and the Zohar is explaining this way. ומשום כבודה של כלה עליונה צריכים לעשות חופה נאה בכל תיקוני יופי. Because when the bride צריכים, כן זה כלה למטה, the physical bride, you know, the bride, the woman that is getting married, she's the physical bride. But when she comes into the chuppah, the spiritual bride, the Shekhinah, dwells over that chuppah and bride. And therefore we need a physical material to bring it down to. These are the poles, the 4 poles of the chuppah and the cloth in between. לכבוד כלה אחרת, because this is in honor of the other bride, the Shekhinah. הבאה לשרות שם בשמחה, that is coming to dwell with happiness, על הכלה התחתונה, over the lower bride, which is the female, the woman who's getting married. And that's why, because it is in honor of the upper bride, the chuppah should be made from beautiful cloth with all kinds of beautiful adornment on it to honor the upper bride, the Shekhinah. And what does it remind us? כי כמו שבכל מילה של ברית למטה, the same way when we do the ceremony of Brit Milah, down below, we put a physical chair to summon, to invite Elijah the prophet. Same way, you made the chuppah to invite the Shekhinah to dwell over the chuppah. So when you have that consciousness, when you have a bride and a groom getting married under the chuppah, and the blessings are being said under the chuppah, and the wine is being drunk over there, you can feel the power of the Mishkan, because here we again imitate those holy words of Parshat Terumah, so we human beings can take physical materials and make them physical vessel to receive the holy light. The holy light is the shochen, says the Zohar, the dweller. And the vessel becomes the mishkan. And the result is that you have a revelation of the Shekhinah. There's another important part that I would like to read, and this is about, again, going back to Shabbat. One of the most powerful paragraphs in the Zohar about Shabbat is in Parshat Terumah, verse 164 in the Sulam commentary. I'm sorry, 163. And it starts, כגבנה דהינון מתייחדין לעילה באחד, ופחיהית יחדת את התא ברזה דאחד. This paragraph is being read just before Alvit of Shabbat in Hasidic tradition. And from that, you go directly into the Shabbat service, the Friday night Alvit prayer. And what does it speak about? It speaks about כמו שהם, the same way that during Shabbat, everything above is being united as one, and because all the sefirot of the other upper world are united on Shabbat, so there's no place for the dark side to participate, the same thing, אף היא דהיינו מלכות מתייחדת למטה, so the same way Malchut is being united, and the upper world and the lower world is being united as one, and that's why we say Shabbat Shalom. Shalom comes from the Hebrew word shalem, which means a whole, complete. When are you a whole? When you're complete, and when does that happen? When the upper world and the lower world are united finally. Terumah, when the lay is being raised, and now it's united with the spiritual dimension. כדי שתהיה עמהם למעלה אחד כנגד אחד. So they are one in front of another. And then the Creator does not dwell over his throne, Malchut, till the Malchut becomes one again. When does Malchut become one? Terumah, when we raise ourselves with unity with the light of the upper world. כדי להיות אחד באחד, to be one within one. והרי למדנו הסוד, and this is the secret של השם אחד ושמו אחד. Of God is one and his name is one. רזה דשבת, the secret of Shabbat, verse 164, this is that Malchut is Shabbat, when it is Shabbat, when it's united with the upper world as one. שנתייחדה בסוד אחד. שישרה עליה זעיר אנפין שהוא סוד אחד. When the spiritual dimension dwells over this dimension and they unite, that's called Shabbat. And Shabbat is about one. That's why it's Shabbat Shalom. Everything becomes one and a whole. And וזה סוד התפילה של Shabbat. That's why, that's the secret of the prayer of Friday night, Shabbat Eve, כי אז נתייחד כיסא הכבוד הקדוש. Then the holy throne is being one. קס"ה 165, כאשר נכנס השבת, as Shabbat enters, היא מתייחדת ומתפרדת מסתרא אחרא. Shabbat is separating itself from the dark side. וכל הדינים נעברים ממנה, and all the judgments are being removed. ומתעטרת בכמה עטרות למלך הקדוש של Shabbat and the Malchut, and the Shekhinah is being crowned with all kinds of crowns of light, of holiness, and everything that does not belong simply is being separated from that. Now the light of the Holy One can shine into this world, and that is Shabbat. And now this is when we can receive the holy extra soul of Shabbat. So a little bit about Parshat Terumah and how do we can use the same concepts daily, weekly in our lives. All the best. Shavua Tov for all.